Welcome back to Norwood Digest. Joining me now is Cowboy Mach Bell. Before we get into anything else, Mark, how does a guy from Holliston get the nickname Cowboy?
Jack, I was hoping you weren't going to open with that one, dude.
Actually, we won't. Save that for later. So, it's not every day that we get people who were in People magazine on our show, and this is a People magazine as a special edition. I can't say where it was from.
It's on the
417. Oh, it's on now.
Yeah, it's right now.
Right now.
Right now, from January to April.
And it's Aerosmith, but inside is a picture of one of the renditions of the Joe Perry project, and our guy Mark is right here, and he was the lead singer for that group in. What, 80?
I joined in 1982, and I was with him until 84, when Joe went back to Aerosmith for some reason.
Crazy guy. So we jumped ahead a little. So let's get back to, all right, so you're a kid in Holliston High, you're playing the cello.
You're right.
And then all of a sudden you say, I think I want to learn how to play guitar.
For some reason, when I was 13, it just became out of the sky with the Beatles, the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, and I already knew how to move my fingers on a fingerboard, but a guitar had frets, and it was loud, and looked like a little surfboard.
And I would guess you'd get more interest from the young ladies playing guitar than cello.
I never noticed that. But, and then I found other guys that played music. And that's how I first came to Norwood, you know. I was in Holliston, and I knew this town for the auto mile.
Sure.
But you know, this is a place where you come to get musical equipment. Back in 1972, my teenage drummer, Bobby Edwards, wanted to get the biggest Ludwig drum set, like Ringo's, except about 4 times bigger in a special color. And there was a guy here in Norwood, Jack Adams, from the famous Jack's Drum Shop in Boston. Same guy, Jack Adams. He was working out of the store right here in downtown that became Farnham's and then Vader. And we came down in Bobby's dad's 1962 Impala, and we filled that thing up with drums, the trunk, the back seat. I was carrying a big floor tom in my lap. And anyway, I got this band together with Bobby called Thunder Train, and we were playing the Boston scene. And there was this little club outside of Fenway Park behind the left field wall called The Rat.
Oh, yeah.
Down in the cellar. Big scene started cooking there around 75, 76. And Thunder Train, our band, started rocking. And pretty soon there was an album called Live at the Rat that was recorded with a bunch of these bands, the Real Kids, DMZ, Willie Alexander. And then we started moving from Boston to New York, clubs like CBGB's, Max's Kansas City, playing with bands. Well, the Cars were opening up for us, new band. The Romantics, What I Like About You, opened up for Thunder Train. And it was an exciting time. We played with the Runaways. Everything was going great. It was going great, Jack, until 1979. I'd been with the band for 5 years. I'm 29 years old, and I still haven't got that big contract. Sure. And I said, I guess it's time to retire from music. So I finally hung up the rock and roll shoes. I went to get a job in Wellesley at my old man's stereo store, the Music Box in Wellesley. And I'm working. I was too scruffy to work on the sales floor. So I'm down in the cellar, taking in broken down equipment, cleaning it up, changing needles. I get this call from Boston, Tim Collins' management office. Earthquake Morton's on the line, says, Mach, Tim Collins just signed Joe Perry of Aerosmith as his newest client, and they need a new singer, and we think it should be you. Jack, it would be like if you got a call, Jimmy Fallon just left The Tonight Show. We're big fans of the Norwood Digest. We've been watching it for 10 years. We think you...
I wish I had a nickel for every time that happened.
I mean, I fell out of my chair. And believe it or not, I had been knocked down so many times by the music industry's a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, it's like trying to be a baseball pitcher or a star on the stage, you know. And I thought my time was done, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't even want to audition. I don't want to have the door slammed in my face again. I hung up the phone. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
I went over in the corner and I started kicking myself. What the heck did you just do? That's when this whole story begins.
Yeah.
Once a rocker, always a rocker. Starts with the phone call on page 1, and then it takes you through. The phone rang again, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. Well, they said you're going to do it. And so I said, okay, I'll audition. They gave me the 6 songs. I auditioned, and next thing you know, I'm touring the United States. I'm touring South America and Canada with Joe Perry, who in the 1970s, you remember,
Sure.
Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion, Toys in the Attic, all that. You know, he was the biggest rock and roll guitarist in America. I mean, he was our Jimmy Page, our Keith Richards was Joe Perry. And for a guy like me that likes to sing with a powerful rock guitarist next to me, because I'm a singer, I was a cellist. I did play guitar, but I switched over. I did the singing thing. I heard you were a singer as well, right?
Yeah, I sing solo. Solo, you can't hear me.
Good one.
So let's get to the book, because I want to really talk about the book.
All right.
So it's kind of interesting how this all came about, because you kept notes. You had like a daily plan or something. I don't want to steal your thunder. You tell me how you did it.
That's exactly what it was like. It was like a daily planner, but it was big enough that besides writing where we were playing, where we were staying, who was on the guest list, I could also put in notes like set lists and who got in a fight and who was in the doghouse. And over time, I started to fill in some of the blanks. By the time I was done with the band 2.5 years later, I had a few of these big books notated with everything that had happened. And then, you know, a bunch of years went by and the book sat on the shelf. I got a call from Jeff Edgers from the Washington Post, a senior editor, a couple of years ago. He was researching a book he was writing about Aerosmith. And he asked me a few questions. I hadn't been interviewed for quite a while about this. This is back in 1983 to 84. And I say, well, give me a sec, Jeff. And I said, oh, yeah, that happened, and it happened on October 4th. And he said, geez, you're pretty specific. And I said, well, I've got it all written down. Well, he was interested in that, and he ended up going on Sirius Radio and mentioning my diaries, which was then picked up by a podcaster on the West Coast, who then had me as a guest on his show in San Francisco. And during that show, he said, you got to do something with this, because this is the stuff we want to know. Even though it's from years ago, but you were touring, and it wasn't like a big corporate tour in jets and being protected from the fans by security either. We were in a little Dodge van. Yeah. It was kind of like going back to high school days. And, you know, one night we'd be playing with, well, I was just listening to Steppenwolf out there. We were playing with Steppenwolf or the Stray Cats or Cheap Trick one night, but the next night we'd be headlining in some little dive. You know, the kind of place where rock and roll really happens. Yeah. And where the kids love to come see Joe Perry play, because, I mean, the last time they'd seen him was at Texas Jam or Cal Jam, or, you know, these huge Woodstock-type festivals. Right. And now here he is down at the end of the street.
But how much different was it touring with Joe Perry than Thunder Train?
There was definitely high points in playing with Thunder Train. It was exciting because we had built that from the ground up, and it was totally our thing. So that was very exciting. But Joe Perry brought his stardom with him, and the guy has charisma, and, you know, I just disappear when Joe Perry's in the room. He's such a beacon, and he radiates. It's like whenever you're working with really good people, you know, if Magic Johnson comes on the court, suddenly everybody's game elevates, you know? And so those are a couple of reasons why it's great to play in a band with Joe. And why I knew then that rock would go on. I would go on to rock in the future, but I would never replicate what was happening right then. And that was another reason why I was keeping the notes, and that became the book, because I wanted to be as detailed as possible in all the strange, funny, weird dramatic, sad, happy things that were happening to us.
What's your favorite story from the book? Can you tell it first of all?
Yeah, some of them are better for the book than to tell. Yeah, that's a hard one to just for me to come up with what my favorite one out of the book is. Definitely, the opening and the close of the book are pretty dramatic. I mean, like I was saying, being picked out of nowhere, suddenly get this gig was a dramatic day in my life. An equally dramatic day was when we were getting set to go to Japan, start recording our second album, and conquer the world, and we all got called into Tim Collins' office to be told that Joe had decided that he was going to go back to Aerosmith. That's covered pretty dramatically in the book. And then the in-betweens is just one long struggle.
Yeah. Some of the things that a couple of things I didn't know till I was looking around. You're the lyricist on a lot of the songs on the album that you guys did.
Yeah, I wrote all the lyrics to all the original songs that Joe and I wrote. There's a couple songs that were brought in from outside writers, but otherwise I did all the lyrics for...
And the name of the book.
And the name of the book, Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, is the name of our album and the name of the first song that I wrote with Joe. See how I did that? Yeah. Kind of all ties together.
Yeah. So tell me how did you do? Like, how does that happen? How do you collaborate on a song? How do you make it work?
What happens is when you have Joe Perry, from the first time I walked into the rehearsal room before I'd shaken his hand or met the guy, he was playing these big, chunky, Aerosmith-sounding riffs like Walk This Way or Train Kept A-Rollin' type things, and I said to myself, you got to put some lyrics on that immediately because this is your chance to be a co-writer with Joe Perry. And so before Joe was even really cognizant of who I was or what was going on or whether I was really in the band yet, I was already working on the lyrics, which I knew would help cement my position in the band as well when I came back for the second callback. Hey, play that thing you were playing yesterday, and then I launch into a whole song and dance.
That's great.
You know, you got to take it where it comes, right?
So, but that's pretty impressive. Like it like hits you all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, the guitar talks to me.
Yeah.
I am a guitarist. I'm left-handed. Joe's left-handed. Our bass player Danny Hargrove was left-handed, and our drummer Ronnie Stewart was left-handed as well. We were forced out. Are you really? Yeah. Jack, I don't know how you would
We're the only people in the right side of our minds.
Bunch of southpaws.
Yeah. So, one thing I heard you talk about or read that you're talking about, the difference between touring with Joe Perry in the United States and then down in South America.
South America, this was an incredible experience because we went to Caracas, Venezuela. We were brought in by a bunch of Mercedes and Audi salesmen. Here we are in Car Town, who had hired us to play a 20,000-seat arena, not one night, but 2 nights, as the headliner. And this is after, you know, we're playing the Channel in Boston, or you know, which is a good-sized rock club, but it's no 20,000-seater. So, and then we're greeted into this foreign country like, I don't want to say it, but it was like the Beatles. There were banners over the streets, welcome Joe Perry, Project, they called us. Whisked immediately to the radio station that is only playing Joe Perry music, Aerosmith and Joe Perry Project music, 24 hours a day. I was there for 4 days. It wasn't until I was in my we each had our own luxury car with our own driver. It was on my way back to the airport. We finally turned on the radio and Hotel California came on. So thank goodness we're out of the Twilight Zone. It was just, and this was the first night we had this press, what do they call it? Like a press, like those things you saw the Beatles in like the black and white.
Like a media press conference.
Yeah, press conference. So we're at a press conference, which then turns into a disco, and I'm dancing with this incredibly gorgeous young woman, and And then she mentions that she has to be on TV the next day. Meant nothing to me. The next morning, I'm in the hotel. I managed to open up my eyes, and I turn on the television set to try to focus my brain. There's Mary Bella, the girl that I was dancing with the last night. She is like the Jane Pauley, Kelly Ripa of Venezuela. She's like the main girl. And I was dancing with her all night last night. Anyway, then it was back to the United States and public transportation.
All right, so tell me, how do I get a copy? If I'm watching at home and I want to get a copy of this, what's the best place to do it? Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon. It's kind of an under the underground book, so it's online is the way to go. You can go to Barnes & Noble online, you can go to Amazon.com, or wherever you get books online, and put in Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, Cowboy Mach Bell, and you'll find me. Or just stick the name in a Google search and bing.
Welcome back to Norwood Digest. I'm still joined with Cowboy Mach Bell, former lead singer of the Joe Perry Project. But now we're joined by NCM's executive director, Jack Tolman. And Jack, you have a kind of an interesting story of how the three of us ended up here today. So shoot.
Yeah, you know, the odds of this happening, and Mark and I have talked a couple times about this, the odds of this are very, very slim. In 1983, I was a 19-year-old video student at Dean College over in Franklin and taking classes, and I saw a sign on campus saying Joe Perry Project coming to Dean. And like Mark said, I'm like, Joe Perry of Aerosmith? I saw him in pictures in magazines, and Cream and Circus and Hit Parade, all these magazines, and I'm like, wow. So I asked my music teacher, my video teacher, hey, do you think I could possibly videotape the show or something as a project? He said, well, you'll have to get permission. So he taught me how to reach. I was talking to adults. I had to call the management office, and they gave me the green light to come and tape the show. So this is April 1983, and I brought my stuff, and all of a sudden I walk into the gym and I'm rolling on the camera, and I see the stage, and you'll see in the video here as it's rolling, it's not this video, it's the other video.
You can still talk.
Yeah, I know. Well, now this one here. Oh, yeah. This one here. Now this is 1983, and I'm in the gym on my camera. And all of a sudden, I see Joe Perry walking in. I'm like, "That's Joe Perry of Aerosmith." Wow. So I videotaped it with some classmates of mine, and we taped the sound check. This was only open to a handful of people, and I had an old VHS tape, and it probably weighed 20 pounds. The whole camera setup that I had. And here's Mark right now. So now he's coming out doing the sound check. And what happened was I was just able to stand there and tape the whole show in 1983. And then afterwards, they came on stage and did the live show. And what I didn't know is that this footage is very rare. I found out 36 years later. I'm doing some work for Norwood Community Media down at the Windsmith, looking at some living local shows that we do with Records and Repairs and Dave Zola for DZ Mods, talking music. And Dave Zola is a Norwood High grad of 1975. So I was talking to him about musicians from Norwood. And back in the day, when you're a little kid, you know who the big kids are. Like, I was in 9th grade, so I knew who all the guitar players were. It was Dave Zola, Stephen Monahan, Ernie Bach was playing guitar, and Frank Coughlin, and this guy named Benny Riley. And so when I mentioned Benny Riley, he said, come here, I want to show you something. And so he played me a videotape of this Jimi Hendrix cover band. He goes, that's me playing guitar. And he goes, and that's Benny Riley. I'm like, oh. He goes, do you know who the singer is? I said, no. He goes, that's Mach Bell. And I said, from Thunder Train and Joe Perry? And he looks at me like, how do you know that? I said, well, I'm a big fan of Joe Perry and the project and just a music buff. So he said, Mark might want to see this. And I told him I had the video. He said, Mark might want to see this. So a couple weeks later, I get an email from Mark saying, I understand you have some footage. And not knowing that, and Mark can take it from here, there was like 250 shows.
And there's never been any video was never made of the band. That we had an MTV video that we did for TV, and there's like these one little bit from a show in Toronto and a little bit from a show on Long Island that exists, but otherwise, zip, nothing. You know, nobody ever brought a camera to a club show, and I almost half remember young Jack Tolman out there in the audience with this big monstrous camera filming us because you couldn't miss it.
Right.
You know, it looked like Godzilla out there with this big thing. But yeah, when Dave Zolik got in touch with me and said, I met this guy that knows who you are and who has video of your band, Joe Perry Project, I flipped out.
Yeah, and the odds of this, I mean, here we are 36 years later, and we are here sitting here in Norwood, and Mach has written a book, and that the odds of that happening are just very slim.
Right. So, where did you keep it?
I actually had, it's a VHS tape. It's in my office right now, and if I remember, I'm going to go down and I'm going to give it to Mark right after the show because I want him to have the video, the actual real videotape. I had the tape all along. I wasn't going to throw away a VHS tape with any Joe Perry project. It just sat on a shelf. And I saved it.
At your house? Or
yeah, it was at my house. It was at my mother's house. It goes back. My mother.
Your poor wife. You must have a.
I have a lot of stuff. Oh, I remember my mother had to go out and buy the videotape because I didn't have any blank videotapes back then.
Yeah.
So she had to go to Leachman's or someplace and buy a videotape. So I saved it all these years just because I thought it was kind of cool that I was that close to Joe Perry. And like I said, I want Mark to have it. It belongs with Mark. But just for me to mention one name to Dave Zola, Benny Riley, to Mark Bell, here we are talking about this video. I think it's crazy.
Well, thank you so much for filming us. And thanks to your mom for going to Leachmere and getting that tape.
Just the fact that we're the only ones in this building right now who know what Leachmere is.
Correct. Right. Exactly. And so it was great, and it was really made me feel good. I could tell from Mark's tone in his email when we met in person what it meant to him, and that was terrific.
That's awesome.
I mentioned it I didn't know Jack's name, but I mentioned the gig, of course. Every gig's in my book. Everything's in the diary, but also that there's some guy videotaping us is also in the book.
Oh, that's cool.
Too. It's in here.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So before we close out the show, I think that you wanted to do a shameless plug.
I would love to. oncearocker.com is my author's website where you can get links to the book and to stuff like all the shows and Jack's videos and all kinds of stuff is on there. But my other thing is my first big Massachusetts book signing event is coming up next month. Northeast Comic Con. Collectibles, extravaganza, celebrities, vendors, cosplay, panels, games, comedy, music, food, fantasy, karaoke, and me signing my book and greeting fans. It's going to be March 13th through 15th, 2020, this year, Friday through Sunday. It's up on Route 495 at the Boxborough Regency Hotel and Convention Center in Boxborough, Mass. And there's free parking, kids 10 and under get in free. And I'm actually even going to be singing karaoke on the Saturday night.
Pretty cool.
With like Urkel and Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer is going to be there. And the Amazing Kreskin's going to be there.
Who knew that the Amazing Kreskin was so? Dean Kaluzian will probably be there.
Yeah.
He goes to all of those as a guy that we both know. And so that's great. And so thank you so much for being with us. It was great to meet you. And I could talk about all these stories all night long, but unfortunately we can't. So I just want to thank all the other guests for being with us. And Jack, since you're the executive director, let's let you close out the show.
Well, we have, what we're going to do now is we have the video that, the sound check, plus the live version of Once a Rocker, which is the name of the book, edited together for the first time. Actually, this is the first time that you'll see. This is the first broadcast of this pieced together video from 1983.
All right.
Come on, man, ass back home. Just